Yes, love's a secret weapon. Yeah!
Hi, I'm Donna Loren.
And I'm Dr Adam Gerace.
And you are listening to Love's a Secret Weapon podcast.
Day when the work is behind you and the shop and the store with the lock on the door. Just get away where your worries won't find you. If you like, well, I'll tell you more. Don't let the day get the better of you. When the evening comes, there's so much to do. You better put on your best and wear a smile. Just come along with me a while, 'cause I'll tell you, I know a place where the music is fine, the lights are always low. I know a place where we can go. And at the door there's a man who will greet you. Then you go downstairs to some tables and chairs. Soon I'm sure you'll be tapping your feet, because the beat is the greatest there. All around there are girls and boys swinging late, a cellar full of noise. It's got an atmosphere of its own somehow. You gotta come along right now, 'cause I'll tell you, I know a place where the music is fine and the lights are always low. I know a place where we can go. All around there are girls and boys swinging place, a cellar full of noise. It's got an atmosphere of its own somehow. You gotta come along right now, 'cause I'll tell you, I know a place where the music is fine and the lights are always low. I know a place where we can go. I know a place where we can go. I know a place where the lights are low. I know a place where we can go.
We have been on a minor hiatus. This world is so topsy-turvy, and sometimes things feel a little slowed down, and other times it's like, whoa, accelerated. So what are we doing these days, Dr. Adam, with kind of finding that neutrality, the calm, what we spoke of previously, this ability to go in and find our inner peace and some balance?
It's really nice to be back with you, because it has been a mere moment. But good question. I think a lot of it has been difficult to find that balance. I've been so busy with work, as you know, but what have I been trying to do? We did go away a few weeks ago, probably more than a few weeks ago now. We went to a music festival when we camped out in the very hot temperatures of Victoria, which is about where we were, was about 2 hours outside of Melbourne. So for listeners who know where Melbourne is, we got on a bus and hopped it for about 2 hours and ended up in it was about 40 degrees here, which I think is, what would that be? What would that be in the American system?
I would say is that like 1.5 times? It's not 100 degrees, is it? Could be.
I'm actually going to check us. Luckily, we have Dr. Google near us. It's 104 degrees. Yeah. So wasn't so great. We were kind of stuck. So last year we went and it was quite wonderful. This year it was still lovely to see everyone and to be part of the music, but you couldn't really do that until late in the evening. So a tent in 104/40 degrees is not so fun, but it was wonderful to see everyone. So that was a nice sort of way to take a bit of time out. But other than that, just been focusing on finding that balance at work and at home, and everything else. What about you? What's been going on? I've got my cup of coffee because it's about 8 a.m. here and it's afternoon where
Oh,
you
lovely. Yes. Well, you're always a day ahead of me.
are. A
So
bit
I'm always
behind,
playing
but a day
catch up.
ahead.
Well, there has been, I would say, I'm going to do a very fast recap. Um, I'm going to start on the solar eclipse, and that was April the 8th. My darling husband woke up to a scorpion bite.
Oh, yeah.
And that was very surprising. And it turned out to be not just one, but three on his knee, which incapacitated him for at least 48 hours.
Must be
Well,
incredibly painful.
ordinarily, a wife would say, oh, good, I can take advantage of him. He's just lying still prone. And of course, you know, I became Nurse Donna for a minute. And we then parallel on that day, we were notified that his granddaughter gave birth to his great-grandchild.
Lovely.
And so, yes, we have a new little girl named Rhea in the family who was named after the solar eclipse, pouring in all of these rays of sunlight. And so that happened on the 8th of April. And where we live in Arizona, we have about 8 to 10 miles of canyon filled with oak, gorgeous oak. And what I found out is that there are about 600 varieties or species of oak. I had no idea. Listeners, if I am adding a zero, I mean, I think that's what I read, because this is a little over, about a month and a half ago now. And the oak that grows in where we live gives off a golden pollen dust. And the whole canyon was loaded with this stream of pollen. And I think what happened, and so does Jared's doctor, that the scorpion bites lowered his immune system, because only several days later, allergies started pouring in.
Yeah.
With that golden dust. And it lasted, well, he's just now starting to recover.
Wow, that's been over a month.
And really and truly, you know, I've been studying energy and in various ways. And the word stillness comes up. And so when something happens to me or something happens to my husband, or, you know, in general, I had to learn a very serious lesson. You know, you either volunteer to be still, or something comes and slams you and forces you to be still, because there's something deep within that one needs to process.
We've so spoken about this before, about all sorts of things, that whole idea that your body or the universe, or whatever you would want to call it, will slow you down if you don't slow down. And I think that's so true, and taking that time, because we're all busy. I don't have time to stop. I don't have time to do this. But if we don't, it accumulates. And I'm a prime example of that. So I'm glad that he took some of that time to just be still. And a scorpion bite, though, wow, I don't think I've ever met anyone who's had a scorpion bite.
This is a first in our lives. Definitely a first for Jared, even though he's lived in desert environments much of his life. But oh my gosh, we could get into a huge conversation about insects.
Few bugs that we know or have known.
I mean, they all have a purpose, that's for sure. One thing I can say is that when I moved from California to Arizona, I had, maybe I talked about this, I had a beautiful dwarf Meyer lemon tree in a big pot, and it was already bearing fruit. And I'd been kind of gardening with it for several years. So finally it arrived, a friend of ours. What a beautiful story. I'm just going to go back for a minute because that lemon tree, the significance was I couldn't bring it with me initially. And that was in the month of May. So my neighbors, which were 2.5 miles away from where we lived in near the Palm Springs Mountains, was a Zen Buddhist monastery.
Yes, of course.
And they allowed me to keep my lemon tree with them until I could transport it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was there for 4 months. So our dear friend, Troy from Palm Springs, who is a landscaper and an interior designer, had some business in Arizona. So he said, I will transport it for you and deliver it. So he brought it, and how kind. And Lemon was very dismayed in this environment, to say the least. On a day, one day, the wind just whirled her out of her pot, and she was root bound, rolling down our driveway.
She was what?
She went. Yes, she was whirled out of her
She
pot
went
and
for a ride.
rolled down. So, she was anchored back in her pot. But I decided when the weather shifted into the frosty time to bring her inside. And lo and behold, I look above
how tall are we
on the
talking
wall.
here? Like,
She was maybe 5 feet.
okay, yeah, yes, yeah.
She's
So
a dwarf.
You're taller than she is.
Yeah, she was, yes, just a few inches. And above her on the wall is a yellow scorpion. And I Googled immediately, and it said, citrus in the desert attracts scorpion.
Oh.
So,
right.
I mean, it was yellow. It was the color of a lemon. And so I called my friend Julia, who is a wonderful.
You've got a friend for everyone, every need that you
here. And therefore I traded in lemon and this scorpion. Oh, and here's an additional side note to this story, just of that. Oh, it's very adventurous here in the Wild West. Oh my goodness.
And Oakley there.
So, I have this composite framed of photos of myself that starts out when I was like 5 years old on some stage, and it's just this long skinny thing that houses pictures. Well, at the bottom, guess what? The yellow scorpion found its way in between my photo and the glass frame, and I literally had to, and it's white. So I had to take it to a framer and seal her back up, and she's back on the wall, and no more scorpion. Anyway,
was the scorpion still alive in there?
No.
Okay.
So right. I must say now, for our listeners, thank you for your indulgence in this story, but it goes a little deeper because since I moved back to California, I do a monthly ritual on the new moon. And I have a deck of oracle cards, a Native American oracle cards. And I picked a card on the new moon, which was the solar eclipse, the day that Jared got the scorpion bite and the baby was born. And my card was scorpion.
Now, is it that literal? Scorpion means today I'm going to see a scorpion.
And what does that mean? There is a word that is associated with scorpion.
Yeah.
And it's called temerity.
Okay.
Temerity.
Right. So tell us about that.
Temerity. Temerity is the fierce fight for the right to be.
That's fantastic. Isn't that fantastic?
And so you talk about a shift of energy. Whoa. So you know me, and I'm knowing myself better and better with every breath, and it's usually this incredible learning experience every day that you're alive.
Yeah.
And as difficult as it was for poor Jared, oh my God, he just lots of ice, and I made a poultice of bentonite, I think it's called, clay. So it's a poultice which draws out the poison.
Yeah.
And between the ice, because it was quite painful for him, quite painful.
Wow. This is horrendous, isn't it?
So that's how the month of April went. And now we're into May, and you had a birthday.
I did recently, yes, and thank you for your wonderful gift of some vintage light shades in the mail. I'm looking forward to finding a lamp to put them on. I was going to say, just while we're talking about lemon trees, my tree has had one lemon, which is kind of green / a little bit of yellow for like the past 2 months, and it doesn't seem to be moving. So I don't know. Give it time.
Give it time to mature. Usually, now again, our listeners can validate or, usually a young citrus or any fruit tree takes about 5 years to really yield.
Right. Yeah.
So, and it's a relationship. Every time you bring up something, it leads to another thought. And so I guess we'll probably veer off, but when I lived in Hawaii, the first 7 years that Jared and I moved there in 1995, there was a field. We had 5 acres, and there was a field, and there was one citrus tree, and citrus doesn't really like to grow. I think lime is okay. For some reason, maybe it's the cocktail. I don't know.
Wherever there's a mojito, it'll be there.
But it was a navel orange tree that was planted way down in the distance in the pasture. And I didn't really wander into the grasslands very often that deep, but I would always pay attention looking out the window. And that thing took 3 years to yield. Goodness. But when she decided to blossom, Adam,
there was no
I'm telling you, she got through a winter. Big, voluptuous, delicious, filled with vitamin C and cured a sore throat, and it was fantastic.
I have to say, my 89-year-old grandfather has got 2. He doesn't do much gardening anymore because his health is not what it was, but he's got these 2 beautiful. He's got a tree that has been grafted over so many years. It's now orange, it's now mandarin, and it's now lemon, all in the same tree. And you can't even tell where one was grafted onto the other one at this point. And it is wonderful. I went and picked all sorts of things. And then there's a tree next to it that's a blood orange. And you can't always tell the difference between a blood orange and a navel orange, or a normal orange without the navel. So, when I cut one open in the morning, who knows what I'm going to get, but it's quite glorious. And I'm sure our listeners have.
Well, that just leads me to a song. It leads me to a song, darling. It sounds to me like your grandfather has a rainbow tree. And I too I had the good fortune of visiting my son, who was home from touring with a couple of very talented English musicians, and they made an album. And I'd love to share it with our community, and I hope everyone enjoys a song about a rainbow.
Just another rainbow dripping on my tree.
Fantastic. Oh, how exciting.
Yes, it was really lovely visiting my son and his wife and my grandson. And we had 3 glorious days together. And now everybody goes back to their lives. And hopefully one day they'll come see where I live. But
Absolutely.
you know, and me and you too. And
Well, yes,
yeah.
yes, absolutely. What was I going to say on that? Because yeah, as we've said, it's been a while since we've spoken to our listeners because all sorts of stuff has been happening. But we are looking forward to welcoming more guests and having more conversations, and we were kind of getting to talking, weren't we, about what we've been watching recently. Hunkering down what's been, and you found a gem that you wanted to talk a little bit about, or as much time as we'd like to talk about.
It was so fun. It was so fun. And, I wanted to begin by saying that I hope I'm not the only one, but, television has meant a lot to me in my life. I mean, from the very start, as soon as there was a television in my house, and I think I was probably 5 or 6 years old, it started with Sheriff John, and it went to Engineer Bill, with red light, green light. That's when you drink your milk, and Andy Devine coming on with a Froggy and saying, "Pluck that magic twanger, Froggy."
Were these local LA shows, or were they national?
I don't know. I mean, I was just a little kid, but I don't know if they were. Why? Maybe our listeners can tell
probably
you.
Remember these, yeah.
And who was it? Buffalo Bill and Clarabelle and Betty Boop cartoons were my all-time favorite. And then I remember it was a confluence when I was 7. I lost my beloved grandfather, my maternal grandfather, and on my birthday, when I was 7, Mary Martin played Peter Pan on stage, and I got to watch it in this little TV with black and white, her performing on stage, and the whole cast for Peter Pan, and then before I know it, I'm on television.
Yeah.
And I'm on these amateur contest shows that were local, and then before I know it, I'm on the Mickey Mouse Club, and TV was just such an important part of my life, and and then as I got older, and of course having children and so forth, I television was important to them, and I definitely became the negotiator, navigator, whatever you want to call it, of television. And then there was MTV, et cetera. So all of this revolutionary stuff. Well, and it all came out of television. So not everybody, but for me, it was just such a big part of my life. Yeah. And so during the pandemic, I think a lot of us, formed whatever ability we had to create a home theater. And then the strike happened in America, Screen Actors Guild, and actors. And, and then Fran Drescher, who was the president of the Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA, which I've been a member since I was 10 years old, she pulled out, the rabbit out of her hat and made miracles happen, and with AI and all of that stuff. Well, so much great television has come. But for me, and I want your opinion as well, it's not entertainment. To me, it's the way that we're communicating.
It's so true. And no, I totally agree. Not to disparage, anything that came before, but it seems we are in this time in television where it's self-reflection. It always has been, but just the level of quality, I think, like you're talking about, the ability to self-reflect, the catharsis we experience through this. We can think about our places in the world, bigger issues through these quality dramas. Because, like you said, TV's always been so important to us. But I think during the pandemic, so many people, like exactly what you said, created this home system. I think movie making so different now, but or movie going is so different now compared to what it was. But this ability to tap into all sorts of wonderful TV shows that we've been watching over the last few years is tremendous. I think our listeners will probably really relate to you talking about that importance of television as well, sort of early on, the early part of television. When you think of the Mickey Mouse Club, there are so many people out here to this day that contact you about that. It had such an effect on people.
It truly was, what do you call that? An extended family kind of feeling. And then when soap operas started, I'll never forget my adopted dad's mother, who lived to be about 101 or so. I used to call her Grandma Rose. And, when I would go visit her, because she would have me over on a Friday if I was available, and she would, I'd knock on the door, and yeah, she was an older lady, but the television was booming. And I'd open the door, and she would be so enraptured within the relationships that she cultivated with those people. And one day she even said to me, "I wasn't invited." I said, What were you not invited to? To Diana's wedding.
Oh, that's tremendous.
It's for some people, obviously. For her, it was not virtual reality. This was her. What do you call that? It's like her eyes of the world.
Yeah. Between that and the soap operas, probably General Hospital and Days of Our Lives and all of those.
And
Absolutely.
Nighttime Dallas.
Yes.
And now we have Bridgerton.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, Bridgerton.
Now I'm so bad. I haven't seen it yet, so you can talk, but I can't contribute.
Oh.
Is it tremendous?
Okay, well, shall we say?
Yes.
This is it's intriguing, to say the least. Anyone who loves costuming, you go crazy. I don't recall if it's Edwardian, but it's the Edwardian. I think it's the Edwardian period in England. But the thing about it that is so appealing to me, there's so many levels of drama that are playing out, but there's absolutely no racial segregation.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, the Queen is Black. There's interracial marriage. When you see her court of hundreds of people parading around on the grounds and assembling for their banquets and whatever, it's a very kind of hello.
Here's someone holding court, by the way.
See, you look so handsome. Oh my goodness, your eyes are so beautiful.
Hey,
well,
she wanted to join, as she often does.
Oh, your daddy takes such good care of you. Anyway, just the that aspect of that show, it just really warms my heart. And then, of course, it's nighttime soap opera, and
Fantastic.
It's extremely engaging.
I do love a nighttime soap opera. I have to admit, it is a guilty pleasure. And it doesn't even have to be guilty.
Start obviously with season 1. Now we're into season 3.
I'm going to be on the couch for a while.
At any rate, but there again, you see the difference between when I started working on television. There were twin beds for the husband and the wife. And absolutely no integration.
Yes.
In fact, we've spoken about Shindig, and because we had mixed races on that show that came too close, physically together, and the network didn't like that.
Yeah, and
it was just Yes, it was a difficult subject, even 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Oh gosh.
Oh.
At any rate, but here we are, 60 years, okay, a blink, blink, blink later, and we have a #1 television series that is so captivating, and it's dealing with the issues of race in a very, very big way.
Yeah.
So that's Bridgerton, and I know you will be very partial to it. What I mentioned to you, and I thought this would be such a wonderful subject, because we're living in a time of so much deception and manipulation and corruption, that this amazing series showed up, starring a man that I watched him, but I never put a name to his face. And I've always enjoyed his acting, but his name is Andrew Scott.
Andrew Scott,
and he plays the Mr. Ripley, who was involved in these terrible, terrible murders, and which, believe me, that's not my cup of tea. I don't.
But this was a very interesting TV show called Ripley on Netflix.
And the reason I wanted to talk about it with you, and I asked you to tune into it and take your precious time and watch it. Not only was it gorgeously photographed.
Yes. Oh my goodness. We have to go into that for listeners who have seen it or haven't seen it. The photography, the cinematography, it's all done in black and white. It's very film noir, I guess, but it is just the attention to detail. Every shot is so deliberate, from like a drain on the street to the buildings, the artwork, there's just so much. It is so attention to detail. It just has such a vision, doesn't it?
It's very Orson Welles, Orson Wellesian, Orwellian.
Orwellian,
At any rate, what really kind of darted through to me was the art of deception. And this story, do tell.
For our listeners, because many might be familiar with the story of Ripley because it's been filmed previously. They might have read the books by Patricia Highsmith from the 60s onwards. She wrote those. But it's the story of a man who I guess is a con artist, a grifter, a forger, whatever we want to call it, and he gets a chance to enter the world of a well-to-do young man, and it kind of goes from there. So he makes his way to Italy. It's set in, I think, 1961 in Italy, around Naples, around Rome, around Sicily, and it goes from there. It's this idea that he enters this world that isn't his, and what he does with that.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about how societies are drawn into deception, entire societies, going back to the aspect of television providing us with these delicate subjects that we're all being confronted with. And sometimes it's so painful to even think that we're being lied to. I know it was extremely painful for me to think that, my parents, just lied, they just lied to me. And through a lot of what we've done, has helped me heal from that. And I'm not going to dwell on it. In fact, I just now have a much greater understanding of it. Well, the presentation of this story is so dark that normally my emotional state would not allow me to stay with it. But there was so much truth and honesty from all the things that I've experienced personally. And then in the world, I see the reflection of it and how much everyone who falls into that trap, the ones that are leading them astray get away with it, have gotten away with it. And so that's why I thought it was an important subject for you and I to kind of align ourselves with, in terms of it's absolutely beautiful. It's totally intriguing. And yet the subject is so dark, but it's a truth that we all have to face. And yet we're still on the edge.
That's so true, isn't it? That this setting of 60 years ago, it doesn't matter about that. It's this universal truth of this person who, it's all about lying, and it's so reflective, isn't it? That when people know there's something going on with him, they don't know quite what it is, but they're not necessarily taken in by it. But it's this kind of chaos that he almost creates through those acts of lying. And the great thing about the cinematography is it's not just in the words, it's also in the way he's lit, the way they light him in this. He's always, so many times he's in dark, sort of partial darkness, partial light. It's very important. It's like a physical manifestation of that. But yeah.
They also put him in this majestic light as well.
Yes.
Not really truly the art, not of a magician, but of a true manipulator.
Yes.
That steps into their power. And he took baby steps. It's like, oh, that feels good. I'll do a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more and see how much more I can get away with and how much more I can get away with. And
then before you know it, yeah, absolutely. So what drew you to this? Was it just something you were told to watch, or did you seek it out? Because like you said, it's not like it's so beautifully done. The acting is superb. Andrew Scott, Dakota Fanning, Johnny Flynn, Margarita Bai, who's a wonderful Italian actress I've been watching for years. John Malkovich has not to spoil it, but he has a delicious little cameo, and he was in one of the Ripley movies from a few years back. What drew you into this besides, it's beautifully done and executed and it's wonderful. But like you said, it's not a topic you'd usually, because there is a bit of murder. We're not spoiling anything there. Just like there's a sprinkling of murder going on.
Yeah, my dearest Adam, this is a time I really have been cultivating my ability to intuit, because there's so much out there. And so I'm being very selective with what I'm exposing my heart and my soul to. Seriously. And so I just think that I needed to parallel whatever life experiences were. And it wasn't immediate. It was just, intuiting, okay, I'm going to try this out. And episode by episode, I was more and more aligned with it in terms of, this deception that he didn't even have to strategize. It just started evolving.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to speak about this in regret. But I want to say that, my experience of having my parents treat me like their property, and signing a 7-year contract with a corporation that I was working for, and them assuming all of the benefits. And there was just a minor percentage that was allocated to me from all the work that I did. And in my life now, I know that is completely reversed. You know, an agent or a manager has a certain percentage, and the artist has unless you're Elvis and, you know, and you've given half of it away. But that experience alone, aside from my mother concealing the truth about who my biological father is, you know, that kind of deception is, it's truly like the wolf in sheep's clothing. And so maybe my mother didn't calculate or strategize, but, you know, all these opportunities came along and she jumped on it. And you know, and that put me into a very weird position, put all these family members in this story, in the same kind of, you know, here they are being victimized by this very warped mentality, and yet they're still keeping a certain amount of sacred love in their lives. You know, I mean, that's exactly what happened to me. And I kind of think that, you know, there will be many stories being told in this way that, you know, is not, how should we say, you know, bastardized or, you know, twisted or manipulated, so that the public can inform themselves through these storytellings and feel the truth in it, you know, and be able to open their hearts and grow from it, and then eventually heal as I am. You know, that's all I can say.
Yeah, it's an interesting one you say that for many reasons, because when you think about this TV show, it's obviously very heightened. What he's doing is very heightened. It involves a great deal of manipulation. But you do see, if you sort of look for it, this idea that it's very subtle in some ways, how as people are drawn into it, they start acting in ways that, you know, perhaps that lie has started something, has perpetuated something in them, and some resist it and some don't. I'm thinking about the main female character. There's times as things start to emerge of what's happening, she's kind of grappling this idea, do I benefit from this in terms of being able to get attention for the book I want to write? And this idea that when you're drawn into these lies that people are creating, this deception and this duplicity, to what extent were people benefiting from it? And when you talk about it, obviously, you know, that's quite a different story, but even that idea of who stood to benefit when you started your career, who stood to benefit, and then when people were starting to benefit from someone else, what that can cause and what that can do. And interesting that you parallel that idea of the, you know, kind of commencement of TV and how much joy it gave you and how much joy it gave so many people. But then again, what was going on behind the camera for you was quite different as well. So there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack there.
And, you know, we're all kind of reaching some sort of a, you know, kind of an apex of awareness. You know, actually, I really feel that we're all capable of accepting more and more truth, even if it is painful. And maybe during the 60s, then in the 70s, and then in the 80s, and even in the 90s, and then going forward, and, you know, wars and etc. And, you know, all of that is so distracting for how you perceive what's coming at you. You're always at a level of survival, you know, unless you're one of the few that are making the decisions for all of us. And I do see that there's more awareness of liberation. You know, I spoke of this young woman, Julia, a little while ago, and of all things, I haven't seen her. She's, you know, a local resident, and she did some gardening for me. And then, gosh, I haven't seen her for many months. And I always think about her. As a matter of fact, last year, she planted 45 daffodil bulbs for me. And they all came out, you know, seeing their little yellow heads. And some of them were white and yellow. And they were all so beautiful. But this year, there's an animal called javelina that live in these mountains, and they're like a wild pig with the horns.
Oh yeah,
with the tusks. And suddenly there's a family of these javelina that like daffodils. So all my daffodil were
Oh
they're
no.
I know they're yummy yummies. And
Do they eat anything else
it
besides daffodil, like a hydrangea? But I don't know. I'm
you know what they eat cactus.
right. Mm.
They are so rough, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So they just want something a little nicer for the in the
Oh,
form
they
of
ate my
daffodil.
marigolds too. That was the yellow, the marigolds, the calendulas, and
Oh
anything
goodness.
that I'm planting to keep the insects away, you know.
Yeah, they're just
But they think it's yummy. So I have to learn how to live in this environment. But what I'm getting back at is the feeling of liberation. So when I saw Julia the last time, she was in a conundrum, but she was dealing with something, and you know, she was toughing it out. At any rate, today I was walking downtown, and believe it or not, in our tiny little town, there is a vegan market. So I was walking down my, you know, little pathway in downtown Bisbee, teeny tiny town, where there's of all things a little vegan market, which I like to go to. And lo and behold, there's Julia. And she called my name out because she looked very different. And when she got closer, I could say, oh my God, Julia. And she said, oh yeah, life has changed. And I'm starting a florist shop up the street.
Oh.
And I have a farm. I'm growing my flowers. And she lost 35 pounds and she looked glorious. And, you know, my goodness, liberation. Wow. Lots of people are discovering and making decisions and moving on, you know, and actually moving on to become more whole in you know, within themselves. Yeah, because she was emanating so much light.
And that's so interesting, isn't it? Because in some ways we are in this time of so much at what we're talking about, duplicity and lies and deception and things like that. And that can put you, as you said, it can really put you in that level of feeling very threatened or feeling like you've got to survive. And there's not always a lot of ability when you're in that to kind of see the way through, or to see the way that you can soothe yourself, or to bond with people, or things like that. It can often drive all those sorts of things away, but people are still managing to draw on something, whatever it is, to make these changes, to live their lives in line with what they value and what's important to them, to emerge from all of that. So in some ways it can feel like a really unsafe or scary place right now, the world, but there are these pockets of people being able to transcend that, however they're doing it.
Well, she has definitely evolved. Amazing. It was wonderful to see her just blossom, you know, into this beautiful young woman. And what I must say is, going back to the eclipse and recently those gorgeous solar flares that we all experienced all over the world, which, by the way, in my you know, world, the way I saw it was that for the first time the coronavirus came in, and for the first time in my lifetime, the whole world was stopped by one thing. It was unified. It was unified by one thing, whatever the outcome. Okay, unification. Here, the solar eclipses, solar flares that came in, the northern lights, the aurora borealis that we all saw all over the world. Second time, the whole world united within this amazing experience that lasted for 3 days.
Yeah.
And what I've been studying with doing energy work is that, let me see if I can put this in an order. Okay, we're right now in a full moon energy.
Mm-hmm.
And the moon's light cleanses all the natural bodies of water
Mm-hmm.
on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
The oceans, the lakes, the rivers, the streams, all of it. The water that's being cleansed by the moonlight
Mm-hmm.
is conducting the light, the divine light that's being brought in by the solar flares.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with electromagnetic energy and geomagnetic energy. And none of this, I mean, of course, anything divine can be seen as perfection, but with the state of this planet, you know, it's impossible for us to be anywhere even close to that, but to be perfect, or, you know, I mean, we all seek in divine energy in some way. But when you think about the natural elements that you know are out there in the universe for us, and the importance of the conduction of light through water, that again unifies all life on planet Earth, because we all, humans, animals, birds, insects, sea creatures, trees, plants, everything needs water. Our planet was constructed to be a unified world, a unified being of you know, of what we call oneness, you know, that we strive for, and to learn from the thousands of years that, you know, has been this just I'll just call it a drama. I'll just call it a drama of war, the drama of any kind of differentiation. And we have, you know, just divided ourselves so much that, you know, when we talk about oneness and this light that's pouring in, and when we're receptive to it, that, you know, we will attract and a more loving perspective. And so watching this 6-part series based on this fellow who had such a distorted mind, and yet you know, it was so how do you say that, it paralleled the reality, you know, it gave you, it didn't scare me, to tell you the truth. It just demonstrated, you know, how someone like that, you know, can develop, and the lives that are affected by it. And when you put it out there, you know, it was, to me anyway, it was like it created some clarity, you know, for people that are like in a confused state of mind. It's like, I don't know what's true or what's not true. Well, we know that was not true. We know that for a fact. Yeah. When you watch this man and how he conducts himself.
And we see that as the audience, but where he creates that chaos is with the people around him who don't know. They know something's going on. They're not sure what it is. And there's a lot of parallels in this for because I want to say to anyone listening that hasn't seen it, you will like really we're talking about the depth and the themes of it and what we took away from it, but there's a lot of enjoyment to be had as well from it. You know, it's as we've said, it's beautifully shot, it's an interesting story, all of those sorts of things. But what you can look for are some of those sorts of deeper things going on, you know, within it. And so, you know, do give it a go. And yes, and it's all, you know, they're all very beautifully shot, and but
you know, he's beautiful. He's beautiful. It's like looking at him, you would never, you know, identify him as the person that that
of what he's doing.
is
Absolutely.
really the art of deception. So, think about all the people that are quite obvious and what right in the spotlight that are identical. When it comes right down to it, it really comes down to power. It's like a little bit of power, and that taste of power, and you want more. It's like an addiction. You want more power, more power, more power, and more power.
And the interesting thing about him as well, the lead character in this, is it's also what he wants. He wants to almost not just take over people's lifestyles, but almost them themselves. There's this real idea of ownership, or I don't know, like it's kind of left to the imagination in what extent he's thinking about these relationships as, is it love? Is it something else? Is it desire? But he wants to own them in many ways. And there's a lot of symbolism around that. He takes objects from people and that, represents that. And again, again, that's a universal theme. I think this idea of people wanting to possess other people, and, that's so in conversation to have.
It's a form of identity theft.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Which again, rather than this V being the symbol of victor, you turn it to become the victim.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think people, including myself and probably yourself, are tired of being a victim.
Yeah. We've spoken about this before, that idea. How much do you take before you want to take no more?
Well, when I look outside my window and I see all the life in the earth, that means more to me. That we have the opportunity to reverse the problems on the planet. And then the idea that, the universe is all around us, but it's also in our heart. And when, I'm broaching this subject because the idea of empowerment is right here on the threshold now. People that, anyone that has felt a disempowerment their whole lives, like, oh my God, I'm just, what's life worth? It's just drudgery and repetitive, and I'm tired. Well, if your little heart connects to I'll call it the galactic universal heart, which is vast out there in space, which is much, much, much bigger than matter. So within all of this space, with the universe and the galaxy, is the source to connect with. When you have that consciousness, your little old heart, if it's broken, you can reach out to this ginormous heart and say, help to heal me, because that is it's just an innumerable, you can't even think of what the source is. So why rely on your own little heart? Keep connecting your little heart with this amazing source.
That's, and it so ties in this idea that you were talking about, this idea of people feeling disempowered, or, when we know that when people feel autonomy, but when they feel relatedness to people, that breeds a motivation to change. We probably should, we're covering so much today to sort of reintroduce ourselves to doing more regular podcasts to the listeners, but this is the kind of stuff we perhaps could talk about going forward. We could delve into some of these issues in more detail.
Well, gosh, this is your profession, and this is, I'm sure, as a little boy, you were interested in people's behavior. Hey, why do you do that? And why do you do that? And then little by little, you study it, and then you turn it into a profession. And then lo and behold, here we are, I'm discussing life with you, and we have this feedback to not just validate that whatever ideas or thoughts we have could be instructive and could be could be maybe a step in the right direction for ourselves and for others.
And just our experiences and what we've found. Not to say they're the be and an end all, it's just what we've experienced. We want to share, and we want our listeners to share with us. That's what it's all about.
Yes. And so I feel like there's a song lurking, from the 60s. I believe it's Spirit in the Sky. I'd like to hear that one.
Fantastic.
Prepare yourself, you know it's a must. Gonna have a friend in Jesus. So you know that when you die, he's gonna recommend you to the Spirit in the sky. He's gonna recommend you to the Spirit in the sky. That's where you're gonna go when you die. When you die and you lay it to rest, you're gonna go to the place that's the best.
Well, it's been so wonderful to reconnect today, and we do hope that I would be so fascinated. Anyone that does watch the show or has seen the show that we're talking about today, Ripley, on Netflix, to let us know. Email us at podcast@donnaloren.net and let us know what you thought of it. And as we start to have these more regular conversations, and everyone can probably hear Lucy in the background. I hope she's not being too but this is life, isn't it? These things happen.
Your friend Lucy, our little mascot, has an intelligence and a heart with the universe in it as well. So she's an equal partner in this.
And she's making herself known. Well, wonderful to speak to you, and I look forward to us continuing to do this into this year now, and to speak to some guests that we're inviting and all sorts of things, and see where we go from here.
Lovely. Lots of love to you, and everyone who's watching Love's a Secret Weapon or listening to Love's a Secret Weapon. Thank you for being in our lives. We love being in yours.
Yes, love.